It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
And haven't said in a while, this show is actually done live. We do it live every Monday through Friday from 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time. If you're listening to the show on our podcast or on our YouTube channel, yes, it's not just a podcast. We actually broadcast it live on Egbert 104.5. And if you want to tune in, you can go to either Egbert or bjshow.co, and you can find the link, and you can stream the show live, or you can just listen on the radio, like old school kind of stuff, okay? I texted back. Mike Carter hasn't called me back yet. For those of you who are listening out of sequence, previous segment, matter of fact, John was our A block. John mentioned the fact that, was it Wednesday, these new laws go into effect? Isn't that what it is, State of Missouri? Yep. And the one law is, how exactly is it again? How's it worded?
I don't have it in front of me, but it's that if you get a traffic violation and you choose to not pay it, there cannot be a warrant issued for your arrest.
Interesting. And this came out of, I think this is probably more of the thing that came out of the situation with Ferguson, because let's be honest, there were a lot of North County munis. Well, I shouldn't even say that. A lot of munis. Unfortunately, my son had, you talk about all the stories I tell. Okay, hold on. Let me see. This is him. Let me call him right now. Here, let me see. He gave me a number. Okay, so let's, you don't mind if I do this, do you?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
I think he's the interesting source on this, because obviously he sees both sides of the equation. Okay, we're going to hit this right here, and we'll see what happens. One ringy dingy, as Shelley would say. That's old school stuff.
Hello.
Mike, you there?
Yeah.
Hey, you're live on the air on 104.5, me and John Combest. Okay, John does his, johncombest.com. You know about that, right?
Right.
Okay. One of the stories he had this morning was Wednesday, the new law goes into effect about the fact that if you get a traffic ticket, they can no longer enter you into the computer system for a failure to appear warrant if you don't show up for court. You know about that then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the incentive for showing up in court anymore? If you get a traffic ticket, and you're of interesting background in this, because you work both sides of the equation. You have your law firm, which specializes in traffic tickets and things like that, and you're also a municipal judge in Wentzville. So if I'm driving through St. Charles and I get a speeding ticket, and let's say I do this on Thursday because law goes in effect on Wednesday. I do this on Thursday. I get a speeding ticket for 20 over, and I take it and I throw it out the window as I'm driving back down on I-70. Nothing's going to happen to me, correct?
No, the law is not as simple as that. They're just basically formalizing the way that you have to issue and command the defendant to come before the court. There's just a couple more steps now before you can issue a warrant for them not coming to court. You just can't automatically have an FTA issue if they don't come to court. You've got to go through several more steps now in order to call them, command them before the court. And then if you've sufficiently satisfied those requirements, you'll still be able to issue a warrant. It just probably will not have the same acronym FTA, as loosely used, because it'll just be a little bit more, couple hurdles for the court to get that defendant into warrant status.
So as it is right now, if I get it, and let's use my same scenario. I'm driving along in St. Charles. I get a ticket. A police officer pulls me, or let's use it like in Wentzville where you're at. I get a ticket on I-70 in Wentzville. Wentzville police officer gives me a ticket. I don't show up in court. Immediately, there is a failure to appear warrant issued for me, correct?
No, it used to be, back 2009, 7, 1995, whatever, up until 2014 around the Michael Brown stuff. That was pretty much the case. We had already changed our processes in Wentzville and didn't really have to adhere or actually catch up with Eric Schmidt's stuff as a state senator when he issued, I think it was Senate Bill 5, and changed the methodologies with which you could calculate the amount of fines you got. And he also moved into this FTA world, and it had already been kind of softened up, if you will, the way that an FTA had to be issued in order to bring somebody before the court. There's just a couple loose ends that are still there that they're cleaning up now with this new bill, but it had already been made a little bit more onerous on the court to willy-nilly bring people in at the first time that they didn't come into court. So this is just going to make it a little more difficult, but it had already been made more difficult for the court since about 2014 or 15.
So right now, is it when the new law goes into effect, what's the procedure? If someone doesn't show up like in your court, what do you do first?
Well, you'll issue a show cause order for them to come before the court, and you'll notify them the way that the Supreme Court rules are. You have to notify them at their last known address. And then if they don't show up into the court, you can decide to issue a warrant at that time, or you can create another record and summon them one more time before you actually issue the warrant.
So it puts a couple more steps in the process then, right?
Right. Yeah, the whole it stems from, the court being punitive for things that otherwise, a great many people think administratively create issues for folks as they move through time and space on routine-ish matters, and where the court starts to look more like a cash register rather than a dispenser of justice. And so if the whole drive of the court is to get revenue in and increase fines and that kind of thing, if it starts to smell like that, then there's suspicion. Whereas if you're actually, like, the state courts have never had FTAs, ever. Circuit 11, Circuit 21, all the ones in our metro area, you don't issue an FTA, you issue a warrant. And these FTAs had been attendant to these fees for $75 or $100 or $125, and these municipalities were poaching these folks or gouging them for these monetary FTAs. And that's the main purpose of these, I believe, is not jacking up someone gets a stop sign ticket in July of 24, and by the time they miss court 13 times, maybe, or 2 times, they come to court finally in December, and they've got another $1,200 in fines by virtue of the fact that they had these ordinances, these FTA ordinances, that were increasing. Something that would have been $105 now is $1,000. And so I think that's the genuine move, is we need these FTAs to look something a lot more like they do in state court.
Interesting. I don't know if I ever told you this or not. You and I don't talk a heck of a lot. You and I have talked through the years a few times. But I put myself through college as a police dispatcher. And I know it's interesting because I've read your bio, and you worked as a UPS driver. Wasn't that what you did? You worked in the restaurant business and UPS driver. You went to Mizzou, correct?
Yeah. I bartended, and you drove for UPS in the summers and in the holidays, and even longer than that here and there. But yeah, they did all that.
Well, the interesting part of it was you hear all the time that I've heard police departments say, we don't have quota systems for our officers writing tickets. Okay, I worked for a police department, and one of these shift supervisors, who lieutenant, occasionally, he would do this on the two-way, and I couldn't believe he would do it. He would call out one of the cars, and he would say to him, Union 63, and Union 63 would call him back, and he says, you have a ticket book in that car, don't you? And the officer would say, I do, sir. And he would say, use it. Okay, so what does that tell you, right? Write some tickets, right? And
well, they're supposed to be out there, exercising their discretion on a regular basis. Somebody's going 74 and a 55, you're roughly, getting closer to 20 miles over the limit. And, these are things that they want to deter, and you write a ticket. Other times it might be a little smaller, and they stop you and give you a warning. And, I believe that some of the officers or the chiefs of police or whoever it is, they do want them out there enforcing laws. Enforcement right now compared to pre-COVID is somewhere about, 76% of what it once was, because they came down, they limited officer contact at the windows and the side of the road from 2020 to 2023. And they've been slowly kind of ratcheting that back up. But it's not even back. It's not even within 80% of what it was pre-COVID. And so I think a lot of these chiefs of police and the public and that, and I know you're talking about another time when you were doing police dispatching, but they do want them out there doing their job. It's not necessarily a quota. It's, hey, I got 16 officers, all of which have written 12 tickets or something. You've got 3. You've got a beat that we want to be safe. We got citizens and folks contacting us that don't want speeders in our neighborhood or on the highway. And it looks like you're kind of underrepresented in your quadrant.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And the interesting ththing is, Mike, I know you drive I-70 in St. Charles County, and I don't know what kind of driver you are, but how many times in the past week have you been passed with somebody doing 100 plus? Come on, give me a truthful answer now.
Yeah, I see motorcycles more often than anything going pretty fast. And I guess the theory sometimes is that, one, there's this kind of new TikTok environment where they actually like to outrun cops and leave them in their dust. And
Right.
officers are not allowed to chase them down. But
Right.
I don't think you see that as much with vehicles or cars. But I do see motorcycles, I'd say once every 22 days, zooming by at inappropriate speeds.
Mike, appreciate it. Plug for your law firm if people want to get a hold of you as far as if they have a traffic ticket.
Yeah, we the traffic division, $45bucks.com, or traffic law counselors. We take care of about 10,000 tickets a year. I think we're the biggest in Missouri. Really nothing we can't do, and a little DWI work. And I don't think anybody knows any more than us. That's for sure. We do a damn good job.
Mike, appreciate it. You are always very responsive and once again, very informative. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, have a good one. Thanks, Brad.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
He's pretty good, don't you think, John?
He's good. We don't know if the rap songs are AI or if they're created by an agency.
I forgot to ask.
Well, that was a really good explainer from Mike, though, about the difference between state courts and muni courts.
Well, and see, the interesting part of that is that that's something that the average person doesn't realize. And unfortunately, when you end up in the legal system, you find out that you can be in one municipality and the rules are X, and you drive 2 blocks and you're in another muni and the rules are Y, and then if the state trooper pulls you over, the rules are Z. You get what I'm saying?
My whole thing is I've never left Toonerville.
You're gonna
and I don't, except for if I go to Hamburg. I'm not leaving either one, Brad, because I know the laws like the back of my hand.
Did you see my Facebook post?
I did not. I am not. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I am not a Facebook guy.
Okay, the reason I did that is because last week I drove through Hamburg and Toonerville and Howell on Highway 94, and I haven't done it in a while.
And hold on, Howell is a city too?
Yeah, there was Howell.
Oh, wow. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. I didn't know that Howell itself was a city. Go ahead.
Yeah, there were 3 cities along Highway 94 in the southern part of St. Charles County. Howell, Hamburg, Hamburg, and Toonerville, Toonerville. I know that sounds crazy. That sounds like someplace in the Walt Disney World, Toonerville. No, it's a real town. It was a real town in Missouri. And they were small towns along Highway 94. And previous to our involvement in World War II was going on in Europe, and the English were in it. But the Americans saw that we were going to get into it eventually, and they needed a place to essentially make explosives. So they decided that area there along Highway 94 was a great place, and they literally went to those 3 towns and told everybody, guess what? We don't care, but you're leaving your town, and we're going to level the town, and this is going to be turned into an area. And the reason they wanted it is they wanted to have an area that was rural, because if they have an explosion at the dynamite plant, the TNT plant, they don't want an apartment building next to it, if you know what I'm saying. They want it out in the middle of nowhere. So
tomorrow, Brad, we should talk about the Hoffmans.
Well, let me just finish what I was going to say. I
Sure.
drive back and forth on 94, and I've done it before, and it was a nice day. I got out on 94. It's up the street from the waterworks. If you drive back and forth, it's about midway between the high school and Defiance. And there's the old cemetery, which is, I believe, part of the Hamburg cemetery, which I think once upon a time was next to a church, which is all gone. They just literally wiped out the town and just leveled it and burnt it to the ground and bulldozed it over, and it's gone. All 3 of those towns are gone. And the cemetery's still out there, and I don't know who does it, but somebody maintains it. It's very nicely cut.
That's nice.
And I went out there and took some pictures, some of the headstones, and it was sort of sad because there's the Mades family, Mades, and not 1, not 2, but 3 of the headstones were infant children. One of them was not even named, literally born and died in the same day. Some of them were, I think one of them, the child lived for a couple months, the other one lived for 6 months, and all the headstones are out there. And it's like a step back in time, because there's been nobody buried out there since like sometime, I guess, in the 30s or 40s. And, it's sort of interesting. I mean, you can imagine, you think about this for a minute, a town, and this is getting more and more prevalent in the United States all the time, because people don't like living in small towns anymore. Even to the point where, Washington, Missouri has this problem where when the kids get older, they don't want to live in Washington, Missouri anymore. They want to go to the big city. They want to live in the city of St. Louis. They want to go to another different city. And that is the problem that a lot of the rural areas are having, in that the younger generation, especially when they see all this stuff on TikTok and they see all the, interesting things you can do and places you can go and people you can meet and eat food that you can eat and drinks you can drink and gummies that you can gummy, and they don't want to be in small towns anymore. So there are a lot of small towns that are just dying by attrition, which is kind of sad,
I think that was incredibly valid thinking like 5 years ago. And now with COVID and the ability that companies don't force you to come into the office, I think more and more people are willing to work in places like Washmo.
Yeah,
or areas that are further away because you don't have to drive to Creve Coeur to go to work anymore.
But that's the parents. The kids don't want that. I mean, once again, and I'm not speaking for the kids. And the interesting thing is, I'm a guy who loves census figures, and all you have to do is look at some of these towns, like for example, Washington. Everybody thinks Washington is like exploding. It's had a very, very, very slow population growth. Partly because,
and we haven't had a census since COVID, right, Brett?
2020, yes. Every 10 years they update.
So that wouldn't reflect people working from home, then, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm not gonna. I'm just saying. I'm saying young people don't like small towns. That's what I'm saying. They just don't like small towns because they want to. Once again, how many times do you watch a TikTok? I know you don't watch TikTok videos, but how many times do you see TikTok videos where the guys, I just got done plowing the South 40. Oh my God, I had so much fun.
I'm guessing not very.
Yeah, right. It's not that at all. It's people dancing around in Times Square and stuff like that. How are you going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Perry, right?
That's a great point, Brad.
John, I get you out on time this morning. Say goodbye.
Bye. See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?